this consciousness is not created by the brain, but it's filtered by the brain. Primordial consciousness is allowed in. And in here, it's very difficult to see much further than maybe a few centuries in terms of this evolution and where it's headed. So I don't believe that anyone today can really bring back the bigger horizon view of where it's all headed. I think we can experience it. We can go in deep meditation and sometimes be gifted by the universe with a profound vision of where it's headed. But good luck trying to convert that into an earthly language that we can share here. It's one of the reasons near-death experiences are so difficult to explain, is because our modes of knowing in those realms are so much grander. It's like drinking from consciousness through a fire hose. It's a far grander, more powerful. I mean, when you have a life review and you go through the most important teaching points of your life in extremely real fashion, reliving them in many ways and feeling it from the emotional perspective of those around you, not from your own perspective. That's where life reviews are showing us two powerful things. That time flow, as we see it in this realm, is very artificial. This time flow is there to support the stage setting for the drama to unfold. But in deeper reality, that flow of deep time is a far more powerful concept of the accumulation and assimilation of information as all sentient beings contribute to this incredible growth. Now, in my own journey, as I said, I would cycle through these realms. I would tumble back down from that core realm all the way back to Earthworm's Eye View. But I was always told in the core, you're not here to stay. We'll teach you many things. You'll be going back. I even had come to believe that going back was going back to the Earthworm's Eye View, because I'd learned that by conjuring up those musical notes, I could re-enter that wormhole that led me up into the Gateway Valley, and thence the angelic choirs provided yet another portal into the core realm. But they weren't kidding. And there came a time when I tried to conjure up those musical notes, and it no longer led to a portal into the Gateway Valley. So I was kind of stuck in these lowest murky realms, but I already knew I could deeply trust in the universe, that I would be taken care of, that I had nothing to fear. I remember it was at that point that I saw circles of beings out around me going off into the mists, thousands of them, heads bowed, some with hoods, some with candles, many with their hands like this, and this murmuring energy was coming from them. And that murmuring energy to me was very surprising, because in many ways, as I labeled it, weeks later when I was writing it all up, I said it was the power of prayer. It was my sense of many kind of sentient beings that were welcoming me back. I didn't know where I was going. I still was not able to know that it was coming back to this world. But in fact, it was very reassuring. And the shocking thing was that same murmuring energy down in this murky realm brought me the same peace and love and sense of comfort and being home as I had sensed in the higher realms, in the Gateway Valley and in the core. And so I was very comfortable with this presence and this loving energy. With George Berkeley, the famous Irish theologian who 2 centuries earlier had noted the reality of idealism, who said, you don't need a world out there. All you need is the percipient, for the mind to perceive it. And in so many ways, that's exactly what is going on. The material world does not exist except as it is a projection from the mental layer of the universe. And this is an extraordinarily important thing. We often talk in this modern science of consciousness, the brain is not the creator, it's the filter, but it allows in a primordial unified consciousness. And that, of course, is what we experience in a near-death or shared-death experience, spontaneous epiphanies, children who report intermission memories between lives, things like that are all about traversing that veil. But the interesting thing is we can do it in meditation. Karen and I have shown that in sacred acoustics meditation workshops, where people can have profound spiritual experiences, where they personally go through many of the main features, say from Bruce Grayson's 16-point near-death experience rating scale, but they can do that through meditation. So you can cultivate this. Just as you were saying earlier, die before you die. That's the crucial thing. And we can all do that in meditation. We can explore these worlds. It's what for example, the Tibetan dream work is all about, using lucid dreaming to explore spiritual realms, so that when you physically die, it's no biggie because you've been there, done that. And that's exactly what all of us have power to do. But it's the science of this, of science of consciousness, which we discuss in detail in Living in a Mindful Universe. I would advise.
The word cosmos is coming from the same root of cosmetics. So this is a place to get beautiful, to beautify your soul.
It is beautiful.
It is beautiful. And it is here to actually upgrade your version of existence. And it is not a punishment place. It's a place to witness yourself, your true divine being. And the word psychology comes from the root psyche, which means breath and wind. That wind that you felt while you were experiencing all that.
Wind.
Yes, yes. So when you're working on psychology, actually you are working on somebody's divine feature. So if you know that you're not working on something mechanistic, then that will help the way you look at it.
As you point out, just like Elvis's mother saw that guitar, the answers lie within us all. And if we can simply start taking responsibility for our choices and wake up to the fact that we're in this together, that we all share this planet with our animal and plant friends, it's really time for us to take proper stewardship and to become wise. And I believe that's what this revolution in consciousness and the science of consciousness is here to help us do. It'll be a synthesis of science and spirituality. You can say religion if you're talking about religions that harbor the oneness and connectedness we all share, as opposed to religious dogma that might preach separation. But really, this is about unifying this world and coming to a deeper kind of appreciation for that healing force of love. And it can heal all of us as we serve as channels, conduits for that love. And remember that the hardships and challenges, as you point out, in many ways are gifts. As I said, it's how we respond to them. It's our free will response that will help us to grow into the true wisdom that I think is humanity's destiny. And all of that is absolutely deeply involved with this awakening to the true nature of consciousness and the nature of reality.
Well, I think one of the things you're saying, Denise, is that people often reject theistic belief because they have a kind of childish caricature in their mind of what is meant by God.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that our study of nature can help us do is to restore some sense of the grandeur of such a being. The universe, the expanding universe that now bears witness to the reality of the beginning, is an extraordinary event. We only 100 years ago, in 1920, we're still debating in astronomy whether or not the Milky Way was the only galaxy or not. The current estimate is that between 200 billion and maybe even 2 trillion galaxies populate our visible universe,
Yes.
which is expanding outward as we speak. It's extraordinary. And it gives us a sense of the immense power of whatever that cause was that produced the universe as a whole. And my argument in the book, of course, is that cause could not have been strictly material because it is matter and energy that come into existence at the beginning, before which there was no matter or physics to do the causing. Now, Professor Krauss has proposed this very provocative idea called quantum cosmology, which purports to explain the universe from nothing. But Krauss, in his book, is popularizing the work of Alexander Vilenkin, the great Russian physicist and cosmologist who's now at Tufts University here in the United States. And Vilenkin has a very sensitive philosophical side. And he, in thinking about his own theory of quantum cosmology, has raised a provocative question. The idea of quantum cosmology is that there is a realm of mathematical physics that pre-exists the universe. It's the equations and math of quantum physics are being appropriated by the physicists to somehow account for a universe from nothing. But this realm of this mathematical reality is oddly a reality which attests to mind. And Vilenkin has noted this. He said, prior to matter, space, time, and energy, what tablet could these physical laws have been written on? He said, if mathematics is the realm of the mind, and mathematical concepts are, after all, conceptual, they're not physical. If math exists in a mind, are we then saying that a mind predates the universe? And this is on the very last page of his book, Many Worlds in One. So he's actually the architect of one of the two great quantum cosmological proposals. And he has seen, perhaps inadvertently, an implication in it that is profoundly theistic. And in the book, I go into this in a lot more detail because it actually goes even deeper than that, in that the quantum physicists are trying to explain the origin of the universe as a natural consequence of what they call a universal wave function. And a universal wave function is something that is the consequence of solving a prior equation called the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which is an analog to the famous Schrodinger equation in ordinary quantum mechanics. So all of that's a mathematical realm of ideas. These are mathematical ideas out of which the universe supposedly comes. But an additional twist in the plot is that you can't solve the Wheeler-DeWitt equation without the use of the mind. Because the Wheeler-DeWitt equation admits an infinite number of solutions unless the physicist imposes what are called boundary constraints upon it. And those boundary constraints are inevitably chosen by the quantum cosmologists to get an outcome that would include a universe like ours. And so what's actually happening is that the physicists are inputting information into the mathematical apparatus to get an outcome that allows them to say that they've modeled the origin of the universe from nothing. But everything prior to the universe in their schema, in their modeling, involves math and the intentional manipulation of math, both of which point to a pre-existing mind or presuppose such a thing. So I don't think that these models that have attempted to circumvent the God hypothesis as the explanation for the definite beginning of the universe have gotten rid of the God hypothesis at all. I think they've brought us right back to where we started, which is the need for a pre-existing, transcendent, and indeed active number of many young people today, especially going through a materialistic scientific education, will come away with the impression that they're kind of cosmic accidents and that they were not intended. And also, if we think seriously about a completely materialistic worldview, that there's also the idea of the heat death of the universe, which is a kind of depressing thing to think about at the end of time, and that there will be no conscious beings left after we reach that point of maximum entropy. These are sort of depressing thoughts. The great Nobel laureate and physicist Steven Weinberg, who recently passed away, was famous for saying that the more things seem comprehensible, and he meant to our science, the more things seem pointless. And I think that does follow from a strictly materialistic view. His sort of scientific nihilism follows from the materialism, because nothing can mean anything or have a point to a rock or an atom or a quark or a physical force or field. Things only mean things to persons. And if the universe wasn't intended by a person, it can have, it's axiomatic that it can't mean anything ultimately. And especially if the universe is going to expire in a heat death in which all forms of conscious life then also expire, then ultimately there will be no minds left to whom anything can be meaningful. And I think as students in particular reflect on this this materialistic world picture, I think they find it kind of depressing. And statements from Dawkins about blind, pitiless indifference, and Weinberg about things being pointless, I think only underscore that. And so I think the rediscovery of God through science, I think, opens up big questions, important philosophical questions. It opens up answers, the possible answers to those questions that are more affirming of human significance. And I think that's one of the main reasons I wrote the book.
Exactly. You know, Dr. Meyer, I think there's another problem, is that the fact that the universe has a mechanism, I mean, these entities have mechanisms, that doesn't mean that they are not God created. Because,
well, in our experience, as you know, if you look at an internal combustion engine, that's a mechanism. Or you look at a thermostat or a switch or a regulatory device in electrical engineering or a circuit, all of these are mechanisms, but
yes,
they owe their origin to a mind. One of the things I discussed in Darwin's Doubt, my second book, was these extraordinary what are called developmental gene regulatory networks, which when mapped looked like electronic circuits, but they seemed to be controlling the development of animal form and the differentiation of different types of cells at the right time in the right place. They control in the sense of choreography the development of all forms of animal life. Well, animal life therefore does depend on a kind of mechanism, a sort of circuitry, and yet that's evidence of a very high form of engineering and therefore intelligence. So mechanism and intelligence are not opposites. Mechanism describes how things operate,
yes,
but the intelligence is necessary to explain the origin of the mechanism that provides for that regularity in operation.
During that time, I was studying neuroscience, and one day, just out of the blue, I asked myself, but these books on neuroscience, they all talk about electrical signals, biochemical signals. They never mention feelings. They never mention, sensations. They only talk sensations equal electrical signals. I said, but that's not possible. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't measure signals. I don't respond to bits. I have feelings. Where is the feelings coming from? That's the first time in my life that I thought clearly about consciousness, that I had realized that consciousness was different than functioning of the brain or electrical signals, functioning of a computer. So, and it was in this milieu of being interested in trying to figuring out, how can I make a conscious computer? I mean, if science is right, that consciousness is a property of a complex information processing system, then a computer should be conscious. And the more I thought about it, the more impossible that was. How can you translate electrical signals into feelings? That there are two completely different categories of qualities of being, of existence. So I didn't know, but as I was working and I was unhappy, I had basically an awakening that changed my life. And that was about 30 years ago, 31 years ago, when I essentially experienced myself as love. But a love so powerful, and so unbelievable, and so rich that the like of it, I wasn't even close to in any of my experience of the highest love that I had felt before. And it was coming from me as a beam. There was, white scintillating light that was rushing out of me and then exploding into light with this scintillating light everywhere. So now I am this light because it was coming from me and it exploded from me. So I am this. This is not an intellectual recognition. This is an experience. I am that. I was there. I was there, and I was also the observer of there. So I was both the observer of my experience, but also the experience, which is, blew my mind. This is, completely different way to conceive reality. All of a sudden, I am the world and the observer of the world. I am a point of view of the world upon itself. Wow. But you see, but this was an experience, just like when you taste the fruit. The taste of the fruit is an experience. If you describe that experience to somebody that hasn't tasted that fruit, he will not understand what you're talking about, because you can only understand by experiencing. You can only understand because you tasted the same fruit. Of course, if you have already tasted a fruit that is similar, you can probably come close. But a fruit that you never tasted before that is completely different than another fruit, you will not be able to describe to a person, and the person duplicate within himself the qualia experience of that fruit until he tastes it. See, experience is living it, living something, is living information, living the information. It's not having the information as bits or as quantum bits. It is, you are inside, the information is you, is another aspect of you. That's where I started thinking that, my God, here information is another side of experience. So we now have a reality that has sort of two faces, an outer face, which is informational, and an inner face, which is experiential, which is knowing, that has meaning. So the information that is outside, that one can see from the outside, is only the outer aspect of a reality whose inner aspect is meaning. So now we have the beginning of conceptualization of how reality might be constructed. So, pretty much I gave you the sense of why, what got me here. And what got me here is this basic experience that changed completely just in probably, I don't know how long it lasted, but of the order of a minute. That's my guess. Yeah, absolutely. But they're only an extension of a little piece of our mind.
Yes.
Because our mind is not only the rational mind, the intellect as engineers or scientists believe reality to be, but also the intuitive part of our mind, which is not algorithmic. That is the part of our mind that connects us to our higher being, to who we are. And that's our we have flashes of insights that are the way that we understand, if we are open to those, a communication to our vaster self, to our little self, which is the ego being.
Yes.
But then we have emotions, and scientists never talk about emotions as if they didn't exist. And most of our actions are based on emotions, on desires that we might not even be aware, because we don't want to be aware, because we keep our consciousness from being aware, because otherwise you shouldn't do what you now want to do. So you see, and then, of course, we have the spiritual dimension, which goes beyond the physical, the mental, and the emotional. So reducing man to only the mechanical part of his brain, is absolutely a dangerous thing to do, that we should never do. And in other words, we cannot abdicate our judgment, our common sense, our wisdom, our ability to make decisions based on, for example, or a collective, a group of people that can argue about a situation. Now, there are situations in life where you don't have the luxury to argue because you have to make a decision, otherwise you're dead. But the point is that we cannot abdicate And the danger of this kind of thinking, the AI community typically, is that eventually those machines are going to be controlled by people of ill will. They will control us through those machines, because those machines cannot control by themselves. They have no judgment whatsoever. So they behind the back, they are controlled by the people. They want to control us, and they can control us if they can convince us that we are machines that are worse than the machines that they have built. And that is even worse danger. That is basically abdicating to the powerful that will use the machine to control us. That is a no-no in front of us.
You have levels of consciousness, and not everyone who looks like human is human according to the level of consciousness he's practicing, actually. So yes, so that is why I think we are mostly using our like animal-like computational machinery kind of consciousness. That is why I think it's easier for us to believe that we are machines and there's no purpose of life and we are here and we're gonna die and this and that. It's so interesting that although we are immortal, we are looking for immortality. That's another ironic thing, you know?
Yeah, but we are looking at immortality from the outside by downloading our consciousness into a computer, which is, absolutely impossible, as we have been discussing, right? I mean, then we are basically, then we can make many copies of ourselves. Which shouldn't be possible, because we are in violate. Our consciousness is in violate, and we know that within ourselves. See, the problem is that there is a lot of fear about our emotions, and most people walk away from our emotions. Then they are controlled behind their back by their emotions. That's how people do silly things in their lives, because desires which are not acknowledged are basically yielded, and then the reason is used to justify, a stupid decision that was actually, came through the emotional side that was not acknowledged. And so it's very important to develop the emotional self. The emotional self is a much richer, mirror of our state of development as human beings, much more than the intellect. And the fact that science typically badmouths emotions, doesn't want to deal with emotions. They don't want to deal with intuition because that's wrong. And so this moving only into the rationality, the rational aspect is not good. It's deleterious. We need to have both. We need to have both the emotions and the spiritual aspect of life, the intuitive aspect of life, and the rational aspect of life. So, because otherwise you go the other extreme, which is the extreme of people that believe basically dogmas. And if you believe, you go the wrong way. Religions have shown that over the history. You have to use your reason as well. So both needs to be done. Both needs to be joining together into a new course for humanity, in which science and spirituality become one. And we understand that the living is not just, just having information, going through a processor, for Christ's sake. I mean, living means becoming. Real living, you become what you experience. I mean, the direct experience of something is like what I explained in my experience earlier. I become the world that I observe. I am the world that I observe. That's the capacity of consciousness, which is not, is not algorithmic. Is beyond algorithm by leaps and bounds. There is no way that an algorithm can give you an experience in which you become what you experience.
There is this example that, and as a Muslim, as a Sufi, I know that Adam what we call Adam, was first put in India. So he was landed in India. So this is why for me, the Vedics and India is very important, all that knowledge. But of course, it's being distorted because I believe that it is being purposely distorted, because we are living we are being given this simulation kind of thing, and any kind of new information is just banned. We have seen these from the past events in the United States and in all the world, who fund certain researchers. So that's not our case, but it is not really fair, because I have also listened to you that you were kind of banned from certain conferences. Certain people wanted to reject listening to you. And I don't understand how somebody who can call himself scientist can be so close to what he believes and gets so clinged. This was what they did to Galileo, and they still talk about him, saying, oh, this is what they did to him. And now they are doing this to researchers, scientists like you. Now it's the same thing. So your work in human origins, as you state, is inspired by your studies in the Puranas, which are the historical writings of ancient India. So what about, could you please, because I know how you give, in your book, you give all these sources. How old is the human race? Could you share it with our viewers?
Well, I think it's always existed in the mind of God. According to the Vedic cosmology, time is cyclical. It goes in vast cycles of creation and destruction. So these cycles go on endlessly. During the basic unit of this cyclical time is called the day of Brahma. So the day of Brahma lasts about 4,320,000,000 years. It's followed by a night of Brahma, which lasts for 4,320,000,000 years. And the days and nights of Brahma go on endlessly. So during the days of Brahma, life, including human life, is manifest in the universe, and during the nights, its life, including human life, is dormant. It's like in a sleeping state. When the next day comes, everything becomes active again. So that means the universe actually has a purpose, and that purpose is to allow conscious selves who are at this moment not fit, not qualified to exist in the world of pure consciousness, which is beyond the cycles of creation and destruction. The reason that there is a universe at all, I mean, actually there are millions of universes according to the Vedas, but the reason they are there is they're like an educational facility, a school, and they have two purposes. One is to allow conscious selves to try to enjoy the world of matter, to dominate, control, and exploit it in competition with others who are trying to do the same thing, or to understand, I am a being of pure consciousness. I'm not from the world of matter. I'm from some other dimension of reality, and let me try to qualify myself to enter that other dimension, which is beyond birth and death and creation and destruction and all the influence of material time. So that is the ultimate purpose. And the human form of life is the form in which we can accomplish that. There are many other bodily vehicles, plant vehicles, animal vehicles, insect vehicles, fish vehicles, bird vehicles. The conscious self can occupy any of those types of vehicles according to its desires. So in the human vehicle, we have the opportunity to understand what our situation is and do something about it. So the human form, the human vehicle has always been available for conscious selves in the material world. So there isn't any one beginning of the human species. It's always the human form of body has always been available. So that's quite a different understanding than many people now have. And as conscious beings, we're all extraterrestrials. We're not from the world of matter. We're from another place, the world of pure consciousness or spirit, if we want to use that word.
Oh, I'm so touched. You know, our Sufi master, Ibn Arabi and Rumi, says, you are not from this world. You are just passing from this world. You're just passing. This is like a bridge. So do not make any constructions on this bridge. It is funny, you know, because humankind is trying to like invest in this place that is just a place, a bridge that you are passing. So, and just like you say that we are pure consciousness and we are here to learn that, you know, in Arabic, God is called Rabbul Alameen, which means the teacher of the school of the universe. So we are all here to actually witness ourselves and upgrade ourselves. But we so forget this, that in this dream state, we think this dream is true and we get clinged to this material stuff that we think we see, because it is, again, we see only very little, light, what we call visible light is like a very, very little in the light spectrum. So what we think is reality is just a very little piece of it, and there's so much beyond it. And again, the cyclic universe is what I wrote in my sixth book, actually, because that's what we believe too. Again, Sufi master Ibn Arabi, when he was in Kaaba in Mecca, he was, doing his, he was doing his worship, and then he sees this person who is a bit tall, and he says to him, "Who are you?" And he says, "I am one of the ancestors of Adam." He says, "Who are you? Which Adam are you coming from?" And he says, "What do you mean, which Adam?" He says, "There were more than 100,000 Adams, and it will never last because God has no end, and he has no beginning and no end. He's just eternal. More than like eternal is not even enough to, say, to make a, like a statement about God. So this is all you say is so much resonating with what we believe, because again, he says the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. That's why the time is a cyclic, like a circle. So the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning.
See that there is some active suppression going on. And I think you're right about that. I think there are forces in the world that are trying to control our sense of identity. For example, if I identify myself as an American man, then I behave like that. It shapes my values, my goals, my activities, So if scientists today are successful in their attempt to get us to identify as machines made of molecules, as purely material beings, which is what they're trying to do in the education systems that they control all over the world today. They are trying to define us as simply another kind of animal, an evolved ape, a purely material being, a machine made of molecules. If we accept that self-identification, if that becomes our identity, then we will think that to produce and consume more and more material things is the main purpose of human life. Our goals and values will become very materialistic. I think, yes, that's our purpose, to enjoy, produce, consume in competing groups, in competition with others for survival on this planet. And what kind of world do we get from that? We get a world where you have conflict on every level of human society. You have the environment and all its resources being consumed in an unsustainable way. And you get the kind of world that we actually have. But if people had another set of another sense of identity, that would lead to a different set of values, goals, and objectives. For example, if all our educational institutions were giving us the idea we are all beings of pure consciousness, there's no need to divide ourselves into so many competing groups. We can solve our material problems. We can satisfy our material needs in the most simple, natural, efficient, and fair way possible, and put most of our human energy into developing the resource of consciousness. It would be a different kind of civilization with different kinds of values and goals. Now, I believe there are forces in society today that don't want to see that. These are the forces who are benefiting from having, the world's 6 or 7 billion people all working to produce and consume as much as possible in their different competing groups, which may be based on nationality or race or religion or what, there's so many divisions. So that process of material production and consumption generates wealth. So those who are in control of the system, they like to keep it like that. So I would say that is one of the motives lying behind this commitment, this unwavering commitment of modern science to its materialist paradigm that rules out any kind of non-material substance, the idea that consciousness may be something different than matter. So I think you're right about that. I agree with you on that point. I just wanted to make...
Are very interesting. I think in one of them you were talking about something about Gulf of Mexico, where the Jurassic period, it was like so old, like 150 million years or something like that, if I'm not wrong. I'm remembering because I have noted all the things that you have shared, but it's not easy to keep up with them because you have given so much source. And I'm hoping that your work reaches millions of people. And I believe that this pandemic actually has become an opportunity for some people to question what reality is, what life is, and that is why, yes, you couldn't travel for the past maybe 1.5 years, but I believe that there's more enlightenment in the way people look at things that you are going to share. Because it's the same in my country too. These things, when we were talking about, there were, as I said, there people were dividing into two. Oh, what is this? What is this? Or the other ones, oh, interesting. But now people are thinking, they're questioning, and they don't believe the things that they used to hear before. Now they are saying there is something beyond what we see. And just like these forces are back.